Good afternoon, students. This is Anju Sharma from Government College Chaksu. Welcome back. We were doing Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard by Thomas Gray, and I have done the first few paragraphs with you, and I have given you the introduction of the poem. And also, in the last lecture, we talked about how the poet is telling ambition to not make fun of the simple village people, okay, and who are no longer alive. They are lying in their narrow cells, that is their graves, and he is specially telling ambition not to make fun of their homely joys, and grandeur also not to look down upon them with a contemptuous smile. Okay, today I shall be doing continuing with the same idea, continuing with the same mood. The poet goes on to talk about how death is a great leveler. In the last lecture, I had told you that why the poet is requesting ambition and grandeur, not to mock the simple people. Why is he doing that? That is what we are going to discover now. Let me just quickly read these paragraphs. They are there on your screens. The boast of heraldry, the pomp of power, and all that beauty, all that wealth ever gave, awaits alike the inevitable hour. The paths of glory lead but to the grave. Nor you, ye proud, impute to these the fault, if memory over their tomb no trophies raise. Where through the long drawn aisle and fretted vault the pealing anthem swells the note of praise. Can storied urn or animated bust back to its mansion call the fleeting breath? Can honor's voice provoke the silent dust, or flattery soothe the dull cold ear of death? Perhaps in this neglected spot is laid some heart once pregnant with celestial fire, hands that the rod of empire might have swayed, or waked to ecstasy the living lyre. So, once again, let's take the first paragraph which is there on the screens. Now, the poet goes on to elaborate and tell why power or why grandeur or why ambition should not mock the simple people, mock the annals, the history of these simple people. Now, what does he say? He says, the boast of heraldry, the pomp of power, and all that beauty, all that wealth ever gave, await alike the inevitable hour. Now, this is important. This is the crux of the idea that Gray is trying to convey. He says, all those people who are born in high family. Heraldry means born in high family, high family. The boast of heraldry, the pomp of power. Pomp, again, is reference to show, splendor. So he says that whether you are born in a high family, or whether you are born in a very powerful family, or whether you have spent all your life in show, in pomp, in splendor, and whether you are very beautiful, okay, and all that beauty, all that wealth ever gave awaits alike the inevitable hour. So he says, all the beauty that you may have had, all those people who have been rich, all those people who have been powerful, all those people who have been wealthy, because it is said that if you are rich, if you are wealthy, then you are automatically become powerful also, because money is equated with power. So he says, how much ever powerful you may have been, how much ever beautiful you may have been, how much ever wealthy you may have been, but everyone, everybody alike awaits the inevitable hour. Now this is important. What is the inevitable hour? That inevitable hour, that unavoidable hour, is the point where we are going to meet our death, which is the ultimate fate of every human being. The paths of glory lead but to the grave. And here he's talking about fame. He says, Fame, the path to fame, the path to glory, all of it ultimately leads to your grave. All of it ultimately, we have to face our death. That is the ultimate truth. Then he goes on to say, "Nor you, ye proud, impute to these the fault, if memory over their tomb no trophies raise." So, again, he is referring to the proud people and he says that do not lay any fault on these people, because it was not their fault that there is no grand monument or there is no grand tombstone which has been raised on their grave. So, he says, if memory, usually when do we raise tombstones? What do we write on the tombstone? I have already told you. Usually we tell as to what the person had attained during his lifetime, or when he was born, or there is a short poem that is inscribed on the tombstones generally. So here he says that if there is no tombstone that has been inscribed with some poetry or which has been carved beautifully, so do not put any blame on these simple people if such grand tombstones are missing from their graves. Where through the long drawn aisle, the fretted new vault, the pealing anthem swells the note of praise. So, also, this is a trend that when a person dies and when his coffin is being carried, usually a sacred tune is played in the church, and he says that the coffin is carried through the long passage which is carved. Most of us, you must have seen, even in our temples, all these places, they are usually very beautifully carved. The building is grand, you have long passages from one end to the other. In the churches also, it is something similar, and usually some beautiful music, some sacred tunes are playing there. So when the coffin is being carried, then also some tunes are played before the person is laid down to rest finally. So he says that if all this has not taken place for these common people, then also we don't have any right to make fun of them or to mock them. Then he continues, what does Gray say? Can storied urn or animated bust back to its mansion call the fleeting breath? Now, this is a rhetorical question. I have discussed rhetorical questions earlier also. Here again, this is another example, because the answer is no. This is a self explanatory question which has an answer within itself. So he is questioning and he says that can the storied urn, now what is a storied urn? Usually the ashes of dead people are kept in a container, and usually this container has some picture on it, or it has got some carving on it, or if there may be a small story on it, engraved on it. So that is what he's referring to. And secondly, some people, they get lifelike statues made in memory of people who have departed. There are many instances, even in our villages, even in our cities, that in the temples you'll see that there are certain benches or certain structures have been constructed in memory of the departed mother or father or grandparents. This is a usual trend with upper caste or rich people. So here he says that can a storied urn or an animated bust back to its mansion call the fleeting breath? Now, the answer is no. Whether you have a very beautiful urn containing the ashes, or whether you make a lifelike statue, or whether you make a very beautiful monument in memory of the dead person, can all these things bring that person into life again? Can you call back life into that body which is no longer alive? Is it possible? The answer to that is no. The breath that is gone forever, the life that is gone forever, do whatever you want to, that is never going to come back. So he says, can honor's voice provoke the silent dust? Honor's voice, like you can write long speeches in memory of the departed souls, or you can try and stir up a commotion, or you can give a very motivating speech, or you can talk about that person in very grand words, in very eloquent poetic words. You can talk about that person and you can flatter that person, but can it bring back that person to life? That is the main question. So he says, can honor's voice provoke the silent dust, or flattery soothe the dull cold ear of death? Dull cold ear of death. Now death is again being personified here, and the poet is trying to tell us that death is deaf. It does not listen to anybody. When the time comes, it will come and take your soul away. You will die when the time is right. So, whether you flatter death, or whether you speak in very poetic language to death, or whether you try to, talk about any kind of praise, you try to load upon death, will it change its decision? The answer is no. It will not be soothed. It will not be pleased. Whatever effort you may put in, whatever effort you may, whatever effort you put into please death to change its decision about taking the soul of the person, it is not going to make any difference. It is not going to, you can say that it is going to fall upon deaf ears. If death has decided, if death has descended, if death has taken away the life of a person, then try as you might, that person will not become alive again. Then you can see that in these three paragraphs, basically what the poet is, trying to tell us, what the poet is trying to talk about is the ultimate truth, the final truth, that death is unavoidable, that death is something which is going to come to all of us, that death is going to come to us whether we are rich, whether we are powerful, whether we are beautiful, whether we are old. It is not going to make any difference. Even young people, if death has decided to come, if death has decided to descend, then whatever we may try, it is not going to change its decision, it is not going to go away. And once the person dies, then also you can create as many poems in his or her memory. You can make as many monuments as you want. You can make as many animated, beautiful looking statues in the memory of that person. Whatever you may try, but that person who is dead is not going to come to life again. This is the basic idea that Gray is trying to convey, and he is also trying to tell us that irrespective of your station in life, irrespective of whether you are an ordinary person or a powerful person, irrespective of the fact that whether you are a rich person or a poor person, death is an inevitable truth. Death is something which all of us who are born on this earth have to face one time or the other. Maybe early or later, sooner or later, but we will face death, and it is unavoidable. Then he goes on to say, perhaps in this neglected spot is laid some heart once pregnant with celestial fire. Now this is a kind of, he's imagining, the poet is imagining here that all these village people who are lying in this neglected graveyard, there is a possibility that some of them might have been very intelligent. And he says that they may have been blessed with a heavenly power. Celestial fire, that is reference to, a desire to do something grand, a desire to attain some, grand, great goals in life. So he says that there is a possibility that some of these people, they may have that fire in their hearts, they may have that desire, they may have that capacity to attain great heights, hands that the rod of empire might have swayed, or wake to ecstasy the living lyre. So he goes on to give example. What Gray is trying to do is he's trying to give all the good examples, all the examples of things that are usually appreciated by people generally. So he says that there might have been people who had a lot of power to gain some great heights, to gain some great position, to gain maybe a whole kingdom. Maybe they had that kind of capacity in them, but just because they did not get an opportunity, or just because they did not get the right exposure, or just because they were constrained within this small neglected village, they did not achieve what they could have given the right circumstances and atmosphere. Second example he gives, that there might have been people who would have become kings. Rod of empire means, rod of empire usually, you must have seen that all the kings, they hold a spectre, they hold a kind of a rod in their hand which symbolizes power. Usually that rod is maybe made of gold or silver or encrusted with some precious stones. So they hold that spectre in their hand, and which signifies that they are a king, they are somebody who has a lot of power, or they are the ruler, or they are the kings of a kingdom. And they might have been very powerful, they might have been very brave, but again they did not become so because they did not get the right opportunity, or the time was not right, or they were not exposed to the ideal circumstances which would have led them to become kings. Then in the last line he says, or waked to ecstasy the living liar. Ecstasy means joy, extreme joy, happiness, deep happiness. So he says that also there might be some people lying here who could have become very great musicians. Lyre is a harp, a stringed musical instrument. I have written the meaning, it is very clear on the page. I have also drawn it to make it clear, because this is a kind of a stringed instrument. This is, you can't call it a guitar, but it is something like, you sit and it's kind of stands before you. It is a straight flat kind of an instrument, and it has got thin strings on it, and you can play music on it. So this is what the poet is referring to, and usually this musical instrument was used by ancient Greeks. And So the poet says that there may have been some people who had it in them. They may have had a natural genius to be able to play upon the lyre or any other musical instrument for that matter. And maybe they could have, if they had been trained, if they had been educated, if they had been given the right atmosphere, or the right kind of education, or the right kind of training, maybe they could have become very exquisite, very grand musicians, and they could have swayed people to their music. They could have impressed upon people with their music. They could have been geniuses. But just because they lived in this small village which is hidden away from the public view, they just led very simple, very ordinary lives. And ultimately, they met with their fate, and now they are lying in this graveyard, in their narrow graves, which are neglected and forgotten. Nobody remembers them now, and nobody comes by this place either, because Gray also has, by chance come to this place, and he has happened to this graveyard, which has led him to think all these things about the people of this village who are no longer alive. So, I hope things are clear. And here, the basic idea is very clear in these first three passages that I have discussed today, as to why Gray is saying all that he is saying, what he is trying to convey, and how he is trying to tell us that death is a great leveler. And once a person is no longer among us, no longer alive, we should not, mock his simple way of living, or mock his ordinary life. So I'll end here now. And once again, thank you for your patient listening. See you again. Bye bye.